Hey there, my name is Hugo Prince. I'm the host of the Road to the IPO, le podcast des entrepreneurs aguerris. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate. I also want to let you know that the podcast Road to the IPO is not available in all the other platforms. iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Please rate the podcast on iTunes, leave a comment, let me know if it's good. Let's start the show.
Got so much weight on my shoulders. Enough to knock me out, but I'm still holding the throne. You'll never know till it's over. So pretty it hurts. Just beware of the thorns. You're an honest man.
Road to the IPO, le podcast des entrepreneurs aguerris. Today's podcast is in English, and I have the great pleasure to have on the show somebody from Japan, Misha Yurchenko, author and blogger. Hey, Misha, how's it going?
Yeah, Hugo. Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Fine, thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation on the show. So for those who don't know you, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, I'm based in Tokyo, Japan. I've been here for about 6 years now. And before I came to Japan, I actually grew up in the US. So I was in Texas, Austin, Texas, and I was studying there, living there, and then moved to Japan right after college because I was studying language. And I had no plan. I just wanted to be in Japan. So I was, so I was lucky to find a job pretty quickly.
Okay, so you went to Japan just to look for new opportunities.
Well, I remember in university, a lot of my friends were struggling to find jobs, and they didn't know what they wanted to do. And many of them decided to go back to school to get a graduate degree. And I didn't want to do that. And I spoke some Japanese, and I was interested to live abroad. So I saw it as a great opportunity to do something a little bit different. So fortunately, I spoke the language because I studied in Japan for a few months during university, so that made it easier to come here and actually find work. So
for those that wanna trying to learn Japanese, can you give us some tips?
I don't recommend it.
Okay, well, why not?
Well, it's a wonderful language, and it's one of the most difficult languages because it has 3 alphabets, and it just takes a very, very long time to learn, thousands of characters. So I think if you want to learn the language, I think it's a great opportunity for yourself, for your career, because not many people speak Japanese, and just some knowledge of a different culture or a different language is already a plus. But Japan specifically is so far away often, in our minds. So it's a good opportunity. But my recommendation is just to come to Japan and study here the best way. I mean, it's really hard to learn when you're not in Japan. Come here for a year and study abroad. So
good. So you went to Japan, and I believe you started your own business, right? Is that right? Like a recruitment company?
So I actually joined a recruitment company initially. So I joined a recruitment company, a small company, 20 people, and they focused on helping technology companies come to Japan and hire people. So I was helping Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, all these big tech companies hire sales and marketing people, which was an amazing experience. Very, very challenging, but also very rewarding because you could see, you hire somebody and then you could see the company grow and you could see them grow in the company. So it was really motivating, and I enjoyed that did that for about 4.5, almost 5 years.
Okay. So you said that you help companies like Facebook and Netflix. So what is the difference in hiring procedure in Japan? So when you're gonna hire somebody, is it different than North America? Is it the same?
Yeah, it's very different. And one of the big challenges in Japan is the labor laws. So it's good and bad depending on what side you're on, but it's very hard to fire somebody. And the system that has been in Japan for most of post World War II Japan has been lifetime employment. So you get a job at a company and you work there for 20, 30 years until you retire. And the loyalty that you give is returned with, cheaper housing and all these perks and a stable job. And so that sort of system has been around in Japan for a while, but it's not really good, because if you want to fire somebody and grow your business because they're not a good hire for your current situation, then it's very hard to do that. And that's one of the big reasons that there's so many companies in Japan that have so many employees that are not really doing anything, and the companies are stagnating and they're struggling to grow. So I think, one thing to keep in mind is if you are hiring in Japan, or you're setting up a company here, you have to be very careful about who you hire. It may be very difficult to get rid of them, but the other big difference I would say is the process as an individual. Like if you want to go get a job in the US, in America, you can find a job in 2 weeks. You can interview and quit your job and then start in 2 or 3 weeks. In Japan, it's very, very rare, because the whole process, changing your job is less common, and so it's more formal. It's seen more formal, and people are a little bit more scared and reluctant to change their job. So oftentimes it takes 1 or 2 months for an interview, and then it takes another 1 or 2 months to quit their job. So maybe it takes 3 or 4 months for somebody to finally quit. And it's really difficult. So one last point on that is there's actually a company in Japan, a startup that's taking advantage of this kind of situation, cultural situation. And you can pay them. So if you're Japanese, you can pay this company and they will quit your job for you. So they will call your boss and just quit for you because you're too scared to do it.
Well, that's a very big different culture, It's very different. So you were talking about startups. So I always believe that Japanese people are more they love work for a company, and I don't really know the entrepreneurship spirit in Japan. So how is it what is the entrepreneur spirit over there? Is it well regarded that people want to become an entrepreneur in the United States?
So it definitely doesn't have the same view in Japan, because like I mentioned, it's very risk averse and not many people are changing their jobs. So there's not as many entrepreneurs, but there is actually a pretty vibrant and alive entrepreneurial scene and ecosystem in Japan. And many of these entrepreneurs are really young. They don't have experience. They're early 20s, and the education system in Japan has not set them up for independent thinking, but they're still excited. They still want to do a startup. And so I think there's definitely people that are doing startups in Japan, and the most successful startup from a funding perspective and just globally that has come out of Japan recently is Mercari, and they're kind of like an eBay of Japan. And it's
Wow.
You know them?
I know them.
Yeah. So they're pretty big, and they're the first unicorn company out of startup out of Japan. So there's definitely people doing things here, but I found personally that there's actually a lot of money and investment, angel investors and corporate venture capital in Tokyo. There's a lot of people trying to give startups money, but I've had conversations with some of these guys, and it's very hard for them to find good founders and good deals to invest their money, because there's not many people that have a track record, and a lot of these entrepreneurs are inexperienced. So it's an interesting balance where you have quite a bit of money available, but not that much skill. So there's if you're an experienced entrepreneur, then it's maybe a good idea to check out Japan, and maybe it's easier to get funding for you.
Well, speaking about funding, there's this guy that funded Alibaba. What's his name? He's very big. He invests in Uber, his company. he's well regarded in the United States. I don't know his name. He's an investor. He invests in Alibaba.
Okay.
Alibaba.
Was he working at Yahoo before, or?
Yeah, he invests in Yahoo too. So his company, I'll keep checking out. Like, I know he's very, like, he has a huge firm company. Let me check here one more. Jack Ma, investor. Yeah, so, well, he's one of the ones that invest in Yahoo Japan and Alibaba, also Uber. I have to check. I don't have the information right now.
No worries. Yeah. There's quite a few people that have invested, so I'm not sure
so
exactly.
Mayasoshi's son.
Son.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
SoftBank. Yeah. That's
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, he's a very visionary and quite controversial, but yeah, he's investing and raised a massive $100 billion fund, and he's investing in everything all over the world. So
it seems that he doesn't invest in Japanese startup, does he?
Yeah, not so much. There's some Japanese startups he's invested in, but mostly outside of Japan, just because there's not many. Most Japanese startups are actually, I would say 98% are focused on Japan. So they're focused on local products, and very hard to scale that globally because they don't speak English or their product is very Japan centric. And so Mercari is the exception, where they built their platform. Their founder is like a global Japanese American guy, and they built they built it with the idea that they would go global. And so that was a plan from the beginning. But many Japanese startups don't have that plan. They just want to focus on the local market.
Okay. And so what did you say he's controversial?
Well, because he's made very big statements like, I have a 100-year plan for what will happen, like AI and VR, like whatever specific industries. Like he thinks that these are going to be here in 100 years, and he's putting money towards that, and so it's just he's a very long-term thinker. I think that's why he's controversial. So.
Oh, cool. So it's very interesting to see this entrepreneurship and investing experience in Japan. And I believe it's because, they're also influenced by China. China is very big in entrepreneurship, and it has a big influence in all those Asian countries.
Yeah.
But I think especially Japan they have the work ethic to really work in a startup company. They have the work ethic just to see if they can, like you say, they can make it bigger.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually a few Chinese entrepreneurs in Japan also. And there's quite a big Chinese and Korean population. And so, like you mentioned, there's kind of an entrepreneurial spirit with a lot of, the Chinese business people, and they're quite aggressive. And so I know a few people, there's a guy named Lu Dong who started up a company in China, and it's kind of like the Victoria's Secret e-commerce for China, and then he moved to Japan, and he's running a company called Foodie Japan. So it's basically like a Yelp or a Foursquare for Chinese tourists coming to Japan, because there's so many. There's a lot of different entrepreneurs here.
Cool. Speaking about big stuff, I want to talk about something that you're very knowledgeable, like Bitcoins. Yeah. Because you have a book about that, but before we talk about the book, I want to talk about 2018, because there was a big boom about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What do you think that happened? What was it that make it so big in 2018?
Yeah. So I think one of the main reasons that it just blew up and the media and everyone on Facebook started talking about it is because people realized at some point, I don't know exactly what day, but at some point people realized that anybody could invest. Yeah. And if you look at, just the general finance investment industry, oftentimes there's a minimum, $25,000 or whatever to invest in certain financial assets. And in Bitcoin, it's like you can invest $1, right? And that could go 20x or 100x in price. And so people started seeing a lot of ICOs raising this crazy money. Venture capital companies saw this happening, and so they started pumping more money. That started getting media attention. And then the average person said, hey, all these different tokens and coins, many of them have shot up, really, really quickly. And so once that was available to people, once it was easier for people to buy cryptocurrencies via Coinbase, Drex, Binance, Bitfinex, a lot of the big exchanges, then they're like, we have to get on this. We can get rich. And so I think a lot of people just jumped in, and that of course kind of snowballed, and that created more buyers. And that happened very quickly. I think in just 4 or 5 weeks, the price went from like 5,000 to almost 20,000. And anybody looking at that could see, with any like finance experience, institutional finance experience, they can go, oh, like, hey, this is not sustainable. It's gonna crash. But the average person, the average Joe, is like, I want to get rich, and they took some big risks, unfortunately, and it went back down. And that's just the market. That's how it works.
Some people got rich for that. So the way there's nothing, they got rich, but like you say, a lot of people didn't. They lost a lot of money. I know that I read some stuff on the internet about the Chinese miners. The one that produce the Bitcoin. They got rich a lot. Because they have the infrastructure, so they have all these computers, and then they get rich.
Exactly.
But most of the people that invest in Bitcoin didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the exchanges, like a crypto exchange, is such a great business, right? Because you have everyone's trading so much, and they have the fees, exchange fees. So that Coinbase is the biggest American crypto exchange, one of the biggest in the world, right? And it's the most well-funded crypto company, right? And it's not even a crypto company. It's like it's a centralized business. So it's interesting how that's worked. But if you look at the market, I won't get into too many details, but basically, if you look at the market every year for the past 10 years in Bitcoin, there's been a similar kind of rise and fall. So pretty much every year, Bitcoin will go up by whatever, 70% or something, from $100 to $170, whatever. And then it'll crash. It'll go back down it'll correct by 50 to 70%. And then the same thing happens the next year. And then that kind of scale has been getting bigger and bigger. So if you look at what happened last year, quite similar, right? It went up by 70%, and then it went back down. And what is the next? The question is, what is the next time scale for that to happen? Is it this year, or is it the next 3 years? Nobody really knows. People have predictions, but my general outlook is I still think it's early. If Bitcoin is actually going to be used by tens of millions of more people, and if banks are going to be using this, then I still think it's relatively early. And it's low, right? You're supposed to buy low, not buy high. So right now it's low.
Is that why you're so bullish about Bitcoin? Is that why you don't really have that trust right now? Is because it's too early?
Yeah. So I think I'm fundamentally very, very bullish, and I think that there's a huge market for Bitcoin globally. I don't, oftentimes people ask, what's the point? What's the point of it in a developed country? Because I'm not going to go buy my coffee with Bitcoin, which is true. Mm-hmm. But I think right now, at least for Bitcoin specifically, the biggest use case is on a global basis for developing countries. So you can think about it as having an option, right? Maybe I have USD, I have yen, I have euros, and I have Bitcoin as an option to pay.
Okay.
And the reason it's easier to understand for people in Venezuela or Greece or Ukraine is because they've had they've had their governments basically just screw them over, and banks screw them over, and so they can't withdraw money, or they can't send money abroad, or the government takes away 20% of their savings. And we don't have that experience in the West so much. It doesn't really happen very often, and so we don't, we don't really think it's a big deal, because our banks are relatively stable. And so I think the bigger market and the bigger use case right now is on a global basis in developing countries for Bitcoin.
That's true, because they need that. Like you say, some countries really need that because they don't trust the government. So yes. But people talk about Bitcoin and it's like a branding, it's just Bitcoin, but there's a lot of the other coins. But what I believe is the big change is not the Bitcoins by itself, but the blockchain, the technology behind the Bitcoin.
Sure. Yeah.
And a lot of people, they don't know what's blockchain. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So just on that is interesting, because I think with Bitcoin specifically, there's several parts to Bitcoin. So there's the blockchain part, which is the technology, and then there's more than that. There's also the fact that it's peer to peer. So I can send it to you, right? And there's no restriction there. And also the fact that it's cross border, so I can send it anywhere in the world. And so there are these kind of different pieces that are important to having a currency, a cryptocurrency. But one of the pieces of cryptocurrency is blockchain, and interestingly, a lot of companies are most interested in this part, which I think is good. And blockchain is essentially it's a different way to record information and record data, and it can be any data, and you cannot alter or change that data without leaving a trace. So everything is on record, and it provides a lot of transparency and trust in a system rather than a person. Because a person could lie, or a person could change something. And so one of the great ways this is being used is just for supply chain management. So if you want to know, where your coffee is coming from, and are people being paid fair wages, then somebody could change those numbers, right? But if you have it on the blockchain, then any changes are visible. And so 100% how much money people are being paid from Starbucks all the way to the coffee farmer. And so it opens up a lot of opportunities for supply chain, for payments, makes payments more efficient. And the way that companies are using it right now is more of in a private way. So you can actually have a private blockchain. And many people argue that that's not really decentralized, and it kind of defeats the purpose, because if only the company has access to it, private, then it doesn't meet all these other kind of open, borderless, peer-to-peer, like kind of Bitcoin does. And so there's definitely some kind of philosophical arguments there in the community. But the point is that it's basically a technology, it's a programming language, and it's going to change the way that a lot of companies do business, save them money, open up new revenue streams. So that's really exciting on the B2B side. And then on the B2C side, you have just more of the payment side, and cryptocurrency side is what's most interesting. So.
Just a small break to let you know that Road to the IPO has finally some sponsor. 2CM and Partners Inc., an accounting firm. Eve and Ali, one of my dearest friends, and they're very good accountants. They have helped me a lot in my accounting. As an entrepreneur, freelancers, even people that have 9-to-5 jobs, you need very good accounting. So that's why I recommend them, 2CM and Partners Inc. So they're based in Montreal. So if you are from Montreal and you listen to the podcast right now, you can give them a call or go to the website that I will put on the description. I will put the link on the description. So if you tell them that you listen to the podcast, they will give you a free consultation. Yes, a free consultation. So give them a call right now at 514-318-3711. 514-318-3711. 1-83711 and let them know that you listen to the Road to the IPO. So let's get back to the show.
I think that companies will become more transparent because they don't have a choice. Like you were talking about Starbucks, and they really pay the farmers and everything where the coffee comes from. So it's gonna be like us customers, we're gonna start seeing everything for our company.
Yeah.
It won't be as private as before. So you're gonna see everything for our company from the top to the low. So yeah, that's very huge for companies. So it's a question about trust, and that's what blockchain is. That's what I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's different ways to use it, and it's if we ask people to define trust, it's actually a very difficult word to define, and I think there's a lot of different issues there, because if everything is transparent, why does everything need to be transparent? Because you don't trust the person, right? If your girlfriend or boyfriend is asking you to be transparent and tell you exactly where they are every day and who they're meeting and what time they're going to go to the coffee shop, that's transparency, but it's not trust, right? And so there's a lot of big philosophical questions that I don't think we have answered. And I think there's different ways to use blockchain in good ways, and also maybe not good ways. And so we have to be careful and think about how to, every business has to think about how to approach it properly. So.
So I read an article on LinkedIn that you wrote, and you recommend that people become a blockchain certificate. They need to get the blockchain certificate. What is it? What they should go and certify themselves as a blockchain developer?
Sure. So I don't think you have to be a blockchain developer, but being blockchain certified just means going on Udemy or Coursera or Block21 is another good course, and taking a 8 to 10 hour paid, some of them are free, course to learn how the blockchain works, how Bitcoin works, and then having that certification on your resume or on your LinkedIn. And the reason I think I think it's just interesting to learn about it. So, people should just go do it, but because it's changing the world. But, from a career perspective, it's just supply and demand, right? So a lot of companies are demanding that, hey, we want to do something blockchain related, or we want to advertise in this blockchain event, or something related to blockchain. So if you have a certification and if you know about it and you're the only person in your team or only person in the company, you just raise your hand and they'll choose you because you're the most qualified. So I think there's just any new industry that is emerging, take some time to jump in there, and I think you can leverage that knowledge to get a higher salary or to take on new projects in your company or whatever. So that's why I think it only takes a few hours to take these courses, and it could be worth could be worth your time. So
so it's a question about being educated about the new technology that comes from. That's good. So before we go to the last question of the podcast, I want to know where can people contact you? Which platforms are you on?
Yeah, so I just got off of Facebook because it was taking too much of my time. But you can reach me on my blog. Subscribe to my blog or email me through my blog, which is just my name, Misha Yurchenko.me. And so I'm on there. I'm writing quite a lot. And I'm also on Quora. So Quora is launched in France recently, but it's like a question and answer site. So I write a lot of different things there every week. So.
Okay, good. And on LinkedIn too, maybe they can contact you.
LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
All right, that's good. So let's talk about your book. So what did you decide to write a book about Bitcoin? Is it because you saw a big wave and you want to take the opportunity to talk about it? Or is it because you want to educate people? And what is your book about?
Well, so I wrote the book after the wave, so I think I missed that. So I think the smart move would have been to write it like right before the peak, and then everybody would have bought it. So I did not do that. I didn't release it until just 2 months ago. So yeah, I've been trading. So when I was working full time in Japan, I started trading cryptocurrencies just on the side because I was interested. And long story short, one of our clients was actually a crypto company at the time. So I kind of got interested in what they were doing, and I started learning more about it, and then started trading cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, a few different ones, and then made a little bit of money. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I just kept doing that. And then we had the big boom, and I didn't lose. I lost a lot of money. Fortunately, I didn't lose all of it. I sold, and I put in my bank. So I'm safe in that perspective. But I still lost a lot of money, and I'm like, this is so interesting because where did this come from, and why did this happen? Why did I not see this? Why was I so greedy? And how could I do this differently in the future? So I think it was just a lot of emotional pain and then confusion, and I wanted to understand how to avoid this problem in the future and how to be a better trader. So I think that's one part. So part of the book is something I wish I would have had 2 years ago. So the next time we have a bull market, the next time the price goes up, and everyone's getting excited, we have to take a step back and say, okay, what do I do here? What's my process? How do I make sure I don't lose all my money? And that's the first part of the book, just kind of risk management and explaining a process, how to make money and how to not lose money, and how to store your Bitcoin properly. And then the second part of the book is really just about the future. So I interviewed so this is not just the investment side, this is more the technology side now. So I interviewed about 35 blockchain startup CEOs, and I asked them, what are they most excited about? And I asked them, what do they think the future will be like for crypto? And so, they were all very, very responsive, and all of them are, building their companies. We've been working on them for 3 or 4 years. And so I got some good insights from them. And so I put all that in the book, what I learned from all these guys. So yeah, it's a little bit of advice, and it's also a little bit of motivation and kind of, like technology for the future, what you can expect, what you should look out for the next couple of years. So
it's a book about educating people about that new technology, and also be careful when investing. That's good.
It's very like practical. It's a very practical kind of step by step. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And which platform is your book available?
Yeah, so you can get it on Amazon. It's on paperback, and it's also on Kindle. So audiobook would be about 1 month from now. So.
Okay. Oh, the audiobook is coming. Great.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna put all the links on the podcast for the book. Where can people contact you? And look, anything you want to say to the audience about Bitcoins, and maybe they want to go to Japan and visit you? Let's see.
Yeah, coming to Japan. So actually, obviously we have the Olympics coming up pretty soon. Cool. And so the government is doing a lot to make it easier to be in Japan. So there's a lot of kind of new kind of signs in English and different languages, so it's easier to travel. And a lot of airlines, like Japan Airlines, is actually, so they're creating a lot of cheap flights because the government is subsidizing the flights because they want more people to come here. And so you can find some pretty cheap flights from all over the world, but not to Tokyo. So I recommend flying into a city called Nagoya. Nagoya. And so there's a lot of cheap flights to Nagoya, and that's like maybe 2 hours away from Tokyo by train, not far.
Okay.
And you can fly there for maybe half the price than going to Tokyo, and then just take a train. So that's my advice for Japan. And then my final advice for cryptocurrencies, if you're interested in investing, then it's obviously if you're looking at it from a distance, you read a lot of articles online. It's very easy to have an opinion, a negative opinion.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is, of course, be cautious, be careful what you do. Don't just give people your money, but just try something. Just try something out. Just take 50 euros and play around with it. Not a lot of money. Something you can you're willing to lose, and then see how it works. Right? See how you download a wallet. See how you send money, and then after you do that, you can have an idea of how it works, and then and then you can decide, oh, do I want to continue or am I not interested? So at least do your research and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. So.
All right, that's good advice. Thank you very much, Misha. I appreciate your time, and it was a wonderful podcast. And I hope the people that listen to this podcast will appreciate it too. Thank you, man.
There you go. Thank you so much.